Hello guys, welcome. This is Pritpal Sahota from Provectus. We'll wait, we'll give another minute or so folks to join, and we'll start immediately. Okay, welcome again, and we're gonna provide a significant value in next 1 hour and entertain you guys around, Hadoop and Spark workloads, migration to Amazon EMR. We have an esteemed panelist. I'll introduce them to you in a minute here. So the key objective of this webinar is to provide significant value to you guys, how to optimize the cost by migrating into Amazon EMR. And Hadoop Spark workload to Amazon EMR, migration, risk mitigation, and best practices, because there are various different ways to move and migrate, and this is very important to mitigate your risk and also get the best value out of it. And the most important piece out of it, towards the end of this webinar, we'll talk about a fully funded by AWS, a 2-day Amazon EMR migration workshop. We'll qualify customers, who will be the right fit for this thing. This is a fully funded, no charge to you. I wish when I started working with big data that I had options like this. This is an awesome option. Provectus in combination with AWS will provide this fully funded 2-day Amazon EMR workshop to you. So keep that in mind. So we're going to start a poll just to make sure that we understand the attendees, so if you, the level of understanding and where you are on the journey in general. So we're going to start this poll over here, and you take 10 to 15 seconds to answer, and you'll see a pop-up window opening up in front of your computer. So what Hadoop Spark distribution your company is currently using? You could select one or more answers. The reason is because I've seen places where there are multiple clusters and different type of distributions which are being used depending upon what department is using it. We'll give you another 5 seconds to answer. We'll be closing the poll in 5 seconds. Okay. So we'll close the poll. Okay, so there is a good number of folks with Amazon EMR and Apache Hadoop. Thank you for that. This will be valuable information going forward. So agenda is we'll quickly introduce you guys and talk about Hadoop market and cost optimization. As I mentioned, that is the core focus of this webinar, and cost related and other challenges of on-prem Hadoop clusters, and cost optimization by using Amazon EMR and migration best practices. Amazon EMR migration acceleration workshop. This is one thing that I mentioned, that 2-day fully funded by AWS. Provectus in conjunction with AWS will provide you this 2-day workshop. It will be very, very valuable to you. One of the key things I just want to mention over here, right over here, you guys have spent, a lot of effort on your existing environments and existing Hadoop setups and got a lot of value over the years, which is great. The change, as you go through the change on the technology cycle, there EMR, cloud-based big data environments like EMR and other ecosystems surrounding it has become palatable, and you'll see the reasons as you go through the webinar. So let me introduce to you my esteemed co-presenters over here. We have Stepan Pushkarev. Stepan is the Chief Technology Officer of Provectus, and he has a background in ML and AI and data analytics in general. My name is Pritpal Sahota. I'm a technical account executive at Provectus. My background is data. I have been hands-on till last year, and I've been working with the data from last 22 years and focused on big data since 2008, and did my first EMR implementation around 10 years back, 9-10 years back. And at Provectus, I am a technical account executive for large accounts, and also I am leading the effort for EMR migration within Provectus. And in addition to that, I'm a part of big data engineering leadership advisory group within Provectus. We have Nirav Shah, senior solution architect from Amazon Web Services, esteemed solution architect. He has. I've worked closely with him last 6 months, ever since I joined Provectus, a few times, and I'm extremely impressed with his level of understanding in big data and data analytics solution space itself. We have Peterson. He is a business development manager on the analytics side, and his main focus is adoption of AWS analytics managed services across the board and helping various different customers worldwide. A little about Provectus. Provectus was established in 2010. We are headquartered in Palo Alto Bay Area. We have 450 employees and growing, and we have offices across North America and Europe, and clients, there's a good mix of clients you'll see in the next slide, which are startups to large enterprises. So one of the key focus that we have as a company in Provectus is, we try to focus on providing significant value to our customer with a combination of cream of the crop engineering talent that we have, large number of them, of 450 employees are engineers, at the same time with the right domain knowledge from the industries also. And that helps us to provide great business solution on the top of great engineering talent that we have. AWS has recognized us for 3 core competencies: machine learning, big data, and DevOps. And we employ, all the modern architectures and also the cream of the crop cutting edge technologies in some cases more established one, to bring the value from the data itself and unveil the hidden value from your raw data and help you solve business challenges. Big data, implementation engineering is very, very strong because majority of the ML AI work starts with the foundation of big data itself. And it could be complex data also, whether it's simple data or complex set of relationship within data. We do all different kind of solutioning around that. And DevOps, as I already mentioned. And on the top of that, we work on creating modern architectures, for your cloud and help our customers on that journey. You can take a look at the clientele, innovative tech vendors seeking for niche expertise to differentiate and win the market. We have a diverse set of customers over here. You'll see life science side of the equation. We have a second genome over here. On AI side, local AI, and on healthcare side, prevent medical AI. And on the top of that, we have Trip Action, Night Decimal, Go Check, and Figure 8. And on the enterprise side, we are serving PepsiCo, Chevron, GE, McLean, Fogg, and equity brands, and many more. So what it does is for us to work with innovative tech vendors and make sure that when the technology is ready for enterprises, take them to the enterprises at that point in time and help our customer on the journey. So we're going to focus on Hadoop market, talk quickly about it, and then cost optimization using Amazon EMR. So it's a time to run another poll over here. It's basically to understand what is the adoption level of Amazon EMR and other AWS services within your company? So please take a couple of minutes to answer these questions. You know, if you're at a POC level or you just started a POC, that's the, you know, your answer will be the number one. And or if you are at the mid-level, migration to AWS EMR of some workloads is already underway. Our expert level, majority of the workloads are running on Amazon EMR. Or if you're interested in migrating to Amazon EMR, that's another one. And I'm not interested in number 5. Thank you. Okay. Yeah, take 5 minutes to answer this. No, sorry, 5 seconds. Okay. Okay. So we have the poll results back, and we will share all of this poll results, and also will share this presentation and the recording of this presentation to you guys as we finish here. Okay. So Hadoop market, this is just, you know, you guys already know this thing is rapid growth of cloud adoption in big data space, uncertainty with leading Hadoop commercial vendors, because you have seen that, you know, there are a lot of headwinds out there, and there are mergers happening, but at the same time, there are challenges around that. So large and growing Hadoop market in general is there, you know, based on analysts, what they're saying is $9.4 billion by 2024, and it's ever increasing. And another thing is, which is very, very important in order for you to be successful, is, you know, your skill set ecosystem, they want to work on cloud-based technologies rather than you know, on-prem solution. And don't get me wrong, on-prem solution has done a great job over the last 5-10 years, and now the changes have happened over the years. Now it's the time to move to cloud, you know, at least the on-prem solutions related to big data in general. And a lot of folks have already in their journey, some are on the way. I'll introduce Nirav one more time over here to go over the ecosystem of EMR and talk about some of the case studies around that. Nirav?
Thanks, Pritpal, and hello everyone. Good morning and good afternoon to all of you. Thank you, Provectus team, for inviting us for this webinar. We definitely love working with you guys, and I personally have enjoyed working with you guys with many of my key customer engagements about their big data initiative. So thank you for inviting us for this webinar. So, you know, like as we know that businesses worldwide are discovering the power of this new big data processing frameworks, right? Such as like Apache Hadoop and Apache Spark. But, you know, at the same time, they are also discovering some of the challenges of operating these technologies on their on-premise, like a data lake environments, or even like the colo or on-premise data centers. And some of the common problems that I have always seen are somewhere around, like, you know, include a lack of agility. They end up like, you know, acquiring a lot of excessive cost, or like the administrative headaches. And then at the end, their IT organizations have to, like, you know, they have to wrestle with the effort of provisioning the resourcing, or like even like working on maintaining or patching, upgrading. And not only it doesn't just ends there, they also end up handling the uneven workload at the large scale. And as we know, like this, there is a huge open source community, so it sometimes becomes really hard to keep up with the pace of rapidly changing this community-driven open source software innovation. And not to forget, like equally critical, the problem is the way that companies' data center deployment of basically Apache Hadoop and Spark, they directly tie together the compute and the storage resources in the same server, and that basically creates a very inflexible model which becomes pretty much impossible to scale. And this means that almost any on-premise environment pays for the high amount of unused disk capacity, or even the processing power, or system memories, because every workload that you try to run on top of this big data environment has a different requirement for each of this component. So then it boils down, we always see this question coming up, like how can smart businesses find their success with their big data initiatives? And this is where like AWS and Amazon EMR can solve many of these key challenges that I just described earlier. So Amazon EMR is the industry leading cloud big data platform for processing the vast amount of data using many of the open source frameworks such as Apache Spark, Apache Hive, HBase, Apache Flink, Hudi, and even Presto. So with EMR, you can run petabyte scale analysis at less than half of the cost of your traditional on-premise solutions. And not only the cost, but you can also achieve over 3x faster performance than your standard Apache Spark that you would be running on your on-premise. And then particularly for this particular slide, I don't want to end up reading the every text from this slide, but what I would like to highlight is Amazon EMR, if you can see on the slide, has several points of entry as many different personas access the data. And as I said, like EMR is the largest analytics service processing the big data into the small data to Redshift or even like a complementary to Athena and Glue. So not only that, with Amazon EMR, Amazon Glue, and along with Amazon S3, it can enable you to decouple one of the key problems that I highlighted earlier. It can help you decouple decouple and scale your compute and storage independently, and that can let you provision an integrated, well-managed, highly resilient environment, which can help you reduce the cost in many of the aspects compared to like on your on-premise data center deployments of this big data initiatives. And that means like you would be able to achieve faster, more agile, easier to use, and more cost efficient big data and data lake initiatives for your organizations. Can we go to the next slide, please? Yeah, and this slide shows our flagship customer success. So when it comes to the big data environment, you are not the only one who are about to get started. We have huge amount of customer successes who have been using our platforms, and they have already done this. And customers on this slide, if you could see, varies from many different verticals such as digital media and advertising, gaming, financial services, telecommunications, or manufacturing, retail, healthcare, life sciences, and the list just goes on. So these slides I definitely would like to take a look at later as well for all the customer stories that we have on our AWS website as well. Can we go to the next slide, please? Yeah, and then on top of that, I just, because this webinar is really geared towards the cost optimizations and the benefit that our customers can get, I would like to highlight some of the customer case studies. So for example, FINRA, they processes close to 110 to 135 billion events a day to basically detect, analyze the market manipulations and insider trading. And this was like just, if you can imagine, it was like around 37 billion events a day back in 2017. So now they have been using Apache HBase for the EMR and S3 as their data lake initiatives on the AWS, and that have ended up resulting like the cost saving of 60%, which turn around to be like 20 million compared to their on-premise solution. And that you could see has a drastical has helped them reduce the time needed to recover and upgrade their services and infrastructures. Similar to that, Assurers, they uses Amazon EMR to gain visibility from the structured and unstructured data sets, and they try to learn more about the customer behaviors, which is around like 290 million members that they have, and they realize a cost saving of 55% when compared to on-demand, and again like 40% savings when compared to the reserved instances that they have been using with AWS and Amazon EMR. Similar to that, Vanguard, they empower many of the key users to provide the ready for analytics environment by launching close to 250 clusters a day, which is a good amount of clusters to create the curated data. And they realize the operational efficiency using a phase approach to reduce the EC2 and EMR, and that have helped them to achieve 600K in less than 5 months as a cost saving. So many good customer stories. Many of them were able to achieve a lot of value out of this implementation. Few other customers like Airbnb, I think many people knows have been using this. They have experienced the hyper growth of the data set, which was like 3 times year-over-year growth, and their employee strength was also growing for like 2 times year-over-year. So at the end, their on-premise environment could not keep up with the pace of these innovations and this growth, and they spent having like had to spend storage and compute were tightly coupled. So with EMR, they were able to achieve the agility with the like the transient and the persistent clusters, and also were able to achieve the higher performance on their Apache Spark with close to like 3 times better than what they had. And I don't want to go and read each of these customer case studies, but before I wrap up, I do want to call out one more customer case study, which is a GE Powers. So they have a solution like Predict Solutions, which grew from 8 gigabytes to close to 200 terabyte. So they moved to Amazon with the AWS cloud, leveraging many different services and primarily the EMR, and they have used to ingest and process close to 1 kind of million data executions a day, helping their end clients to gain faster insight and do a predictive maintenance by minimizing their downtime. And they've been they're able to achieve us like saving millions in the lost revenue. So what I'm trying to say here is like based on the experience and the services, the breadth and depth of the services that we have with AWS, customer can have the confidence and they can mitigate the risk that these organizations have successfully utilized these services and migrated their on-premise clusters to Amazon EMR. And this is where like, our partners like Provectus can help our end customers to expedite their journey to AWS and help them not only simplify, but I would say even amplify their big data initiatives with their deep expertise into data analytics, DevOps, and machine learning. So again, I feel free to reach out to us for any thing that we need. But with that, I'm going to hand it over back to Provectus team.
Yeah, thank you, Nirav. Before we go further, I just want to say that on your GoToWebinar control panel, you'll see a questions tab. So you could post your questions out there also, and we will take Q&A in journal towards the end of the webinar. Thank you.
Yeah, this is Stepan speaking. So really quick, just to keep up with the pace of this webinar, news from the trenches. The ninth decimal, another great case study that we're proud to share. The ninth decimal is in ad tech and ad measurement and analytics space. So analyzing tens of terabytes of data daily to gain insights into performance of ads campaigns for major Fortune 500 brands. This migration is actually it looked like a magic where you take the Spark workloads, you change the engine, and you get 3x speed up for latency and performance of the Spark jobs, and have 3 to 5x of cost reduction. So instead of like having for 6 hours pipelines, having 1 hour pipelines just from lifting and shifting the Spark workload to the new engine, you start benefiting from the proprietary EMR engine that has been the Spark engine that has been developed by AWS. You start benefiting by fast disks and fast network. And this is kind of the easiest and the lowest hanging fruit I've ever seen. So this is more like an outlier, the kind of from the general statistics, because the workload itself has been highly optimized already on premise, and it was we were using the latest Spark versions, the latest innovations in Spark, and that migration was kind of the lowest hanging fruit, as I mentioned. The IMVU is probably on another side of this spectrum, is one of the most challenging migration I've ever seen in my experience. Mostly because the customer decided to take the by the way, IMView is the world's largest avatar-based social network, and it has 6 million players and 4 million virtual goods. I think it's grew over the last year really significantly, but it's probably outdated numbers. So the one of the challenges I could admit is a huge amount of Spark and Hive jobs, which were on written in outdated versions and have never been touched during the last few years, and was more like a black box big data environment. And the customer decided not only to migrate to the cloud, but also to upgrade their infrastructure and architecture to the next gen architecture. So you see, like taking this kind of black box type of environment and shipping it to the cloud and changing the gears in the meantime is kind of super risky, but you're getting the most benefit at the end. So obviously in this case, the one of the main benefits is going to be measured by the productivity of the engineers and data analysts who will be dealing with this type of environments in the cloud.
Okay, thank you, Stepan. We talked about cost optimization. Nirav and Stepan has talked about specific case studies out there. Now the analysts are saying the same thing. You know, there's an IDC study which talks about that 57% reduction in cost of ownership. You know, when you move to Amazon EMR from your Hadoop and Spark workloads, and 99% reduction in unplanned downtime, which is pretty huge. 342% 5-year ROI if you look over the period of time. And you have more efficient big data teams, and you know it'll take just a few months for you to break even, and then drive profits out of your investment as soon as possible. And then overall the management value that increase from big data Hadoop management perspective too. Now we're going to talk about quickly the patterns of migration and the best practices overview. And so that, as we continue on the webinar, we'll talk more about that towards the end also, but, just want to give you a quick overview over here. So, moving your Hadoop and Spark workload to EMR migration, there are a few ways to do it. The first one is a lift and shift, which is the lowest migration cost kind of a way of doing it. But it has a very high ongoing cost and lower business value because you're not adding any new business value. It has quickest time to market because you can do it in a rather quick fashion. That's one way of doing it. And then there's a re-architecture where you migrate to Amazon EMR with a new architecture with complementary services to optimize the cost and provide additional functionality. And complementary services could include, Athena and other things. There are multiple other services available in AWS ecosystem that could add value. Over here, there's a medium risk and medium migration cost, and medium ongoing cost, and high business value addition, and medium time to market. So it'll take a little more time than lift and shift, but there is a value of doing that, this way. We'll talk more about that. And the next gen architecture is when you migrate to Amazon EMR, your Hadoop and Spark workloads, you may want to include some other areas like streaming, containerization, and that will add additional functionality, scalability, and flexibility. You would like to do revise your pipeline in general from the architecture of your data pipeline perspective and other areas. It has got a little higher risk and it has got higher migration costs, but it has the lowest ongoing cost and the highest business value addition among all three patterns. And it has longer time to market from going from a standard Hadoop Spark workload on-prem on to next gen. It takes a little time, but there is a way to do that, and we have done it in multiple different places. There's a step process to go from re-architecture to next-gen architecture. We'll talk more about that. And from based on my experience, you have to find the sweet spot based on specific organization. That's exactly what we do when we do the 2-day migration workshop, fully funded migration workshop. We go in details of that. So, this is an organized approach, of how to get to the optimized EMR implementation. So you do the right sizing of instances. Lift and shift is one part. You go beyond that. You're using S3 versus HT first, and you're using transient cluster wherever possible. Auto scaling, spot pricing, utilize of that, and then automated orchestration in general. And then you have an optimized EMR solution. We'll talk more about that when we go into the benefits also. Another overview of cost optimization. On the business side, your CapEx, OpEx, and your on-prem licenses, fees, maintenance overhead. And this is a measure on uncertainty in Hadoop vendors that you might have seen in the past also. And the lowest pricing comparing to other Hadoop or Spark premium vendors, you'll get anywhere between 10 to 20% cost reduction based on our experience. And EMR value add, some of the biggest one is, as Nirav mentioned, decoupling storage and compute, transient cluster, spot pricing, auto scaling, S3, as a low cost, excellent storage solution which can store varieties of data, and you have a proprietary Spark EMR engine. You could get from 10 to 40% reduction, and then on the top of that, you could have a next-gen architecture. Revise the data pipeline, streaming processes, and serverless ETL, and go as serverless as possible, and you could have a cost reduction of 20 to 90%. So we go through, this is a part of when we do 2-day migration workshop also, it's helpful. So what we do is we analyze all your workloads, along with AWS, and then come up with, develop a matrix over here, where you have business value and implementation complexity model. We develop that model and then come up with prioritization and identify what are the initial workloads to migrate. And what we have seen that the biggest value you get is when you pick up medium complexity workloads and also low complexity workloads mix. We don't want to go only with the low complexity workloads in the beginning. We want to have a nice mix of it so that you can show the business value to your business users within your company. And we identify the excited innovators in your team, and then help them learn about it, and then they can spread on-prem to EMR migration. And another one is, based on my experience working in big data, it's always good to work with an expert team of partner like Provectus to lead this effort. How can we help? As a team, we will build a business case for you, for EMR migration, including comparative cost analysis, develop a risk mitigation plan, and design next-gen data platform and its adoption roadmap. So, we can explain that how can we go in an organized fashion from your on-prem Hadoop Spark workloads to re-architect to, next-gen architecture. So I'm going to quickly go on the on-prem challenges over here. We already talked about it. Compute and storage growth. You're forced to grow compute when you only need extra storage, and then you have a multiplication factor of 3x. And that also adds huge amount of value, and from cost perspective. So it's kind of forced growth of your cost. Another important one is I've seen many even 1,000 node clusters in the past also, and we've seen that there is the loads on these clusters is like there are certain peaks and certain reprocessing time, and then there are steady states. But you are paying for this huge cluster at that point in time, and which is kind of huge ongoing cost. And then at the same time, there's a contention of resources between compute bound and memory bound. As you can see, Spark being memory bound and Hive being compute bound, you're using the same infrastructure to do that, and that present huge challenges in some cases. And another important one is different departments are doing, sometimes different version of various different applications around in the ecosystem, and it become a difficult, overall from management perspective, because when you have a one monolithic cluster, it's very hard to go ahead and upgrade the version easily, because one of the department may be using one version of 5 versus another department. Same thing is with Spark, Impala, and Presto, depending on what your use is. And on the same time, on the machine learning side, Spark ML, TensorFlow, MXNet, depending on what you're using. So it's a last poll of the day. We just wanted to understand what kind of challenges your company is facing currently. So, you could select more than one answers. It could be operational cost, capital expense growth, performance, scalability and reliability, or all of the above. And I've seen all of the above also in my past experience, but it depends upon in your case. We'll give you another 5 seconds to do that. Okay. We'll be closing the poll here. Okay. Yeah, so operational cost, 36%. Wow, that's totally understandable. And we'll share the output of this poll with you guys also. So the cost optimization using EMR, what are the key things that we can do? We talked about it. We talked about it in the past, earlier during the webinar also. So the biggest thing is you're using Amazon S3 is your persistent storage. It does help a lot. You have 99.79% uptime, if I'm correct over here. Yep. And then you could have many varieties of data. You have lifecycle policies, versioning, security comes with it by default. And another important thing that we are doing is we are not forced to grow our compute when we need only storage. We are decoupling the storage and compute. And also, we could have transient clusters, and then we can turn off clusters on need basis depending on the usage itself. And then at the same time, we have auto scaling, which we could start with a smaller cluster size and then scale it on need basis. So this is an important one, from transient cluster perspective. Basically what you're doing is that one is transient, and the key part is the word is purpose-built clusters. So different departments have different kind of needs. You could see over here, depending upon time of the month and depending upon the usage by various different departments and different type of processes they run, and you'll see that there are some hotspots during the month, and then there are underutilization of the overall cluster itself. And the purpose-built cluster helps you to manage that. So you could create either transient clusters or persistent clusters. You could separate clusters by application. So that way you could have different versions of different applications like Hive and running for different departments. And on the top of that, you could submit jobs, build pipelines, and design consideration perspective, and persist your data in S3, storing metadata off the cluster, which is even great. And how long the job runs, depending upon that, you can go ahead and provision that. And depending upon your SLAs also, you could make sure that you'll orchestrate these purpose-built cluster in such a way that what type of SLAs you have for what type of workloads, you could basically enforce those SLAs easily. But we have a built-in disaster recovery. In the past, I've seen that it is very hard to have a disaster recovery plan for big data environment, especially when they grow. So you have a built-in, you have availability zones, that is available to you, and you could easily implement that in Amazon EMR. Again, auto scaling. A quick example over here. You have a 10-node cluster running for 14 hours, and your total cost is $140. Because you could have transient clusters and purpose-built clusters. what you could do it is, you could have you could reduce the time a job can run and then increase the value to you by just adding 10 more nodes from the spot, unused EC2 instances, and which is at a 50% discount in some cases, in many cases, and then your overall cost in this case will reduce from $140 to $105, which is a huge gain from cost optimization perspective. Spark performance, Amazon EMR team is doing awesome job in keeping up to speed with Spark new versions and coming up with proprietary changes also, and then also they come up with changes related to Spark, which are basically keeping it par with all the premium vendors out there as far as performance is concerned. So the key part for you to know is it is basically enterprise-ready Spark environment. I talked about many benefits over here, and take a look at what the all the analysts are saying. IDC report confirms the same thing. I talked about it earlier, and then Gartner suggested the same thing, and Forrester also. That overall value that you get is EMR is the largest Hadoop provider in terms of both revenue and user base. So there are diverse workloads that's being run over here. So this is a quick benefit summary. We decouple compute and storage, built-in disaster recovery, turn off your clusters after use, agility of auto scaling of clusters, leverage spot pricing, and many more. And I just want to bring in right now Perry Peterson to ask you a few questions that is coming in my mind. Perry, could you share with us, why do you think buy AWS for Hadoop workloads?
Yeah, Pritpal, thanks for the question. I greatly appreciate the opportunity to join you guys on this webinar and talk about some of the benefits that EMR is driving for our customers. I'm just going to reiterate a few points that have been made throughout the call that I think are really prominent and are really big benefits that we see as customers move into AWS and move their, most notably their Hadoop and Spark workloads into AWS. And first and foremost is that, EMR is based on open source technologies. So from an open source perspective, we embrace that community. And that's really what we want from our services perspective, right? Is to give our customers choice and allow our various services to integrate well with one another. And so when we look at EMR, we support over 21 different Hadoop frameworks and modules directly built into the service. So in terms of what I saw from the poll, from an operational perspective, we take a huge burden off of our customers' plates as it relates to not only managing the underlying infrastructure, but the actual software components as well. And so that's a big benefit for our customers. But when we really look at some of the cost saving factors as well, when we look at the actual infrastructure, we have the scalability, right? And you guys hit on it. From a scalability perspective, we have the ability to scale up and down based on the resource requirements of your organization at any particular point in time. So you don't end up in those scenarios where you're paying for peak utilization time periods and resources, but that's a lot of overhead during those down times, right? A lot of these workloads on the big data side are going to be cyclical in nature. And so we don't want you to pay for unused resources or overhead. And so we have ways with spot instances, which are unused EC2 capacity within AWS's global infrastructure that you could bid on and pay cents on the dollar for, as well as reserved instances that really help you drive the cost of that infrastructure down. The last thing I'll mention too is just the availability of your big data infrastructure. Within AWS, you get the rich goodness of our underlying infrastructure from a regional standpoint as well as from an availability zone standpoint. And so if you do have workloads that do need high availability and need as much uptime as possible, right? Want to avoid downtime at any cost, you really have the ability to architect those environments to suit also not only the performance, but the availability needs of your organization.
Thank you, Perry. I appreciate that. So I just want to remind one more time, you guys can post your questions in this GoToWebinar question tab. Really appreciate that, and we'll go over that in a few minutes. Those questions, please go ahead and do that. Take a minute over there, but I'm going to continue over here. Okay, so we'll talk about the next gen part of architectures where we focus on serverless analytics. AWS has this awesome offering over here, like Nirav talked about and Perry talked about, Amazon Glue in combination with Athena and many other serverless offerings where you have zero infrastructure, zero administration, and you could take advantage of these as you can see over here. From Glue perspective, you could do ETL job authoring, you have a centralized catalog, and also generate customizable code and schedule and run your ETL jobs and manage other things. Amazon Athena, you have your serverless interactive query engine, and it works great. It uses standard SQL, and you'll see you pay only for the queries you run and save 30 to 90% as on queries cost using compression. And then you have standard connection way of connecting it to it. And a lot of customers, our customers and AWS customers are utilizing this. This is an important piece. Typically, I've seen in the Hadoop common pipeline pattern, there's a lot of heavy processing going on in full scans, big joins, data reshuffling, and then you have a flat SQL transformation. And then on the query side, we have MPP queries and fast selects, but a lot of 90% of the workload is in heavy processing. And another pattern is, you just throw in everything in Hadoop, and then on the way out, do majority of the work itself, and then your 90% of cost is there in the query side of the equation. And what we propose over here is, rather than that, go in an organized fashion, you do change data capture properly and do incremental processing. In majority of the cases, that's possible. And then you do flat SQL transformation. It will reduce your cost 2 to 3 times based on our experience. And then you have a query section where you do reporting itself. So basically, you're going from big data to fast data. That's what it is, Provectus has this awesome offering for Provectus streaming data platform on AWS. You could check it out. Basically, this is a quick start guide for users who are interested in enabling real-time analytics, and it includes the ecosystem around EMR. Right from getting events level data and any other type of data, depending upon the data types, and on the top of that, you have all the ecosystem around EMR that is available, including Redshift, Athena, Glue, and if you guys are interested in that, please reach out at the end of the webinar, or you could send an email to me. So EMR Migration Acceleration Program is fully funded by AWS. This is very, very big. I wish that I had something like this, when I used to do, a few years back on-prem implementations. So it's a Provectus and AWS joint offering where we do a fully funded dedicated. Only thing that you have to dedicate is your time, not money. So it's a 2-day virtual discovery workshop hosted jointly by Provectus and AWS. And workshop deliverables are validated by AWS, and migration credits can be provided to eligible customers. So you have to, there is a qualifying process, and that's one thing I'll talk about it towards the end, that, there is a 30 minutes call that we want to set it up with you to see that if you qualify for that. And I will highly, highly recommend you guys to take advantage of this 2-day virtual workshop, which is fully funded. So this is a little bit of detail of the workshop. We go through your top benefits. We basically go through your workloads, identify which one you should be moving first, and what kind of SLAs that you have. And then we do hands-on guided labs during that. So basically train some of your folks also as a part of it, and go deep dive on security, deep dive session on data serving and other areas. So this is a very, very, very good offer for you guys. You guys should take advantage of this thing. And yeah, so basically you could email me at pritpal@provectus.com or hello@provectus.com, to schedule a 30-minute assessment session with you to see that if you qualify for fully funded Amazon EMR migration workshop. Okay. With that, we'll check that if there are some questions over here. Okay. Okay, so, I'll just open it up as internally as a panelist fire chat over here, or fire talk over here, fireside. And then the key thing that I want to talk about is that overall advantages of EMR are huge. In general, you have already seen that even the biggest one I could think of, it is also, there are many, but transient was my favorite because I used to face a lot of problems around that, managing large clusters and at the same time having failures of running out of memory here and then running out of disk out there. And I've seen that Amazon EMR has basically alleviate all those kind of challenges. And another thing is the ecosystem that is built around it to get the best value out of your data. So that's huge. And I'll bring in Perry one more time. And Perry, do you wanna say a few words over there?
Yeah, absolutely, Pritpal. I think the one thing that I also want to call out that we see a lot as we actively work with our customers on the AWS side is that as you do start to move your analytics platforms and big data infrastructure into AWS, this represents a great opportunity for you to really evaluate what you're currently doing in your on-prem environment and then determine if that's really what you want to do as you move to the cloud. We kind of painted a picture here that there's a number of different ways that you can get to AWS and move your big data workloads to AWS. And so lift and shift is absolutely one of the ways that you can move into AWS. Take exactly what you do in your on-prem environment today and move that into our infrastructure. And that works phenomenally, and that will have some cost savings associated with it. However, where we see the biggest benefit on our side is when customers really start to evaluate their infrastructure and really start to determine if they're using the right tools for the right jobs. You'll hear that message from us from an analytics as well as from a database perspective. We no longer want you guys to feel like you have to be backed into a singular solution that you then have to retrofit initiatives, applications, use cases into. Because you only pay for the resources when you use them, you now have the autonomy to create what a lot of customers are pursuing is a data lake that allows you to analyze the data that you store within your data lake in a number of different ways. And so whether you have use cases and applications that are more suited to, let's say, historical analytics from a data warehousing perspective, or maybe it is a big data workload, or maybe we're talking about streaming workloads, you now have a suite and a portfolio of services that work well with one another. And so as you are starting to really evaluate if you do want to make that shift and migrate those services into the cloud, Provectus is a great partner, and I'd highly encourage you to engage partners like Provectus because they have experience with these services. They've built out these solutions. They've helped customers re-architect and refactor what they had from an on-premise perspective. And so there's a great opportunity for you. And when we talk about cost savings, that's where we see the most cost savings with our customers, is really starting to better understand what they're doing, not only for today, but for in the future, and then really pick and choose the right services that allow them to not only get the performance that they're looking for, but also the availability, and then wrapping that all with the ability to also maintain costs with different pricing structures, again, reserved instances, spot instances, but also the ability to even just turn off services if you're no longer using those, whether that's cyclical or maybe you don't need them at all, right? You spin up a cluster, you do your analysis, you kill it, and you never pay for it again. Those are all options that are now available to you. So again, when we talk about that move, really think about it differently. Don't box yourself into what you've done in the past, because the future is much brighter and there is a lot of services that you can now start to leverage.
Yeah. Thank you, Perry, for that. Yeah, so that's that I've seen in my experience also that majority of the time that it's good to go ahead and review what you're doing on your on-prem environment, and that'll bring a lot of value right in the discovery session itself. That what are the right ways to move? As Perry mentioned, lift and shift is one way of doing it. Re-architecture is another, or you could build on the top of it. You could start with lift and shift, and then make the changes of re-architecturing it, and also and then go to the next gen architecture. So there could be a step process out there. Another important piece is like the rich ecosystem that you'll get. You'll get much more than just simply Hadoop, Spark workloads being taken care of by Amazon EMR, but the surrounding ecosystem that we have, for example, the serverless options, and that gives you a lot of flexibility from cost optimization perspective. Huge opportunity from cost optimization perspective. And you could manage SLAs easily, because depending upon the your SLAs, you could, for example, if there is this complex workload and that this workload has to be run in the middle of the night or whatnot, but the SLA is very rigid, you could have 5 or 10 minutes before the workload processing is going to start, you could have a transient cluster up and running, and then you could run the workload, and the output is put back into S3 for available for the next steps of the processing to utilize that data itself. Yeah, and also part of the ecosystem is Redshift also, as you have seen it in the Amazon EMR slide that Nirav shared, that you could utilize it as for more of standard business analytics related work also. And lastly, I just want to say one more time is like, I wish when I had these options like, where I could have a fully funded, migration workshop, and it is really, really valuable. And AWS and Provectus will go deep into overall analysis of your existing system and provide a lot of value also in a way that, your skill, your engineers, provide them some sort of training also as a part of it. And at the end of the day, come up with a plan, an organized plan and a roadmap how to move from on-prem onto the cloud. Okay. We have a couple of more minutes. If you guys have any other questions, please post it, and I'm more than happy to answer those questions. Okay. Okay, thank you for your time, and you guys have a great rest of the day. Appreciate you joining. Thanks.